Maryland's most important game of 2025 is against Billy Edwards and Wisconsin.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code Locked On College at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Maryland's most important game of the 2025 season that is very close to coming is against Billy Edwards and the Wisconsin Badgers. So I was really thinking about this, and I was like, okay, I think last year I was talking about a lot of the times I was like, what is Maryland's most important game of their schedule? I think that was a big topic that I talked about before the season started last year. It was definitely a big thing for me. I was like, this is Maryland's most important game of the season. I think last year, I think I said it was the Michigan State game, if I'm not, or I might have said the Virginia game. I forget. It was one of those two early season games I said was really important. It might have been the Virginia game because I said we compete with them for recruiting in terms of DMV area players. It's an early season game. This year's most important game of Maryland's entire schedule, so not just the non-conference, not just the conference schedule, not just the Big Ten, not just in terms of the big dogs, I think is actually against Billy Edwards and Wisconsin. And I want to change a little bit today what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Billy Edwards. I want to talk about Maryland's most important game. But I actually, in the second segment, want to talk more about Malik Washington and his small injury and how I think that affects the quarterback battle in the second segment. So just make that note. But I think I can kind of combine the first segment and the second segment for today and what I originally had planned out. But I think that Maryland's most important game, to go back into this, is against Wisconsin on September 20th. We don't know the times yet. We do know some of the times of the first couple of games. We play FAU at 12 o'clock on August 30th. I'm pretty sure that's the Saturday. Then September 5th, we play 7:30 p.m. I think that's a Friday night, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, pretty sure that's Friday night. And then, because then we play in 8 days against Towson back on September 13th. So at 12 p.m. So we have an idea of what times, but we don't know what time our first Big Ten game is against Wisconsin. But I do think this is the most important game of the season for the Terps. For one, it's our first Big Ten game. It's our first real test. Most people expect us to beat Florida Atlantic. They expect us to beat Northern Illinois. They expect us to beat Towson. And I just don't see a world where that doesn't happen. I always think of last year, Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois and still being able to make the national championship game. But something tells me if we lose to Northern Illinois, we won't still make the national championship game like Notre Dame did. But still, you never know what can happen is kind of what I bring up. So we definitely don't want to take those games lightly, but I'm also not on the team, so I can go ahead and assume that Maryland is going to beat those. Excuse me, guys. I can assume that Maryland is going to beat those three teams. I think that's a reasonable expectation. I think that's kind of just getting the feet wet, see kind of how the team looks, putting everything together. New OC, new DC. How does things look under Pep Hamilton? How does the offense run? He said it's not going to be quarterbacks dependent. He said that the quarterbacks, we're going to put them in good spots to be able to do different things. So it should be a fairly easy first couple of games. Maybe that's a topic for another day, but I can definitely see one of those games giving us a little bit of a hiccup. Not in terms of us losing. I don't think we should lose one of those games, or we're not going to look at this team great. But I can definitely see one of those games being like, that was a hiccup game for the Terps. That didn't go exactly the way we wanted it to, or whatever the case is. I can definitely see one of the games kind of going like that for the Terps. But it's really interesting because I do think that I do think that Maryland's first game against Wisconsin is the most important game of the season for the Terps. I think because it being the first Big Ten game for this new Maryland team with a bunch of new pieces, I think it's going to be a huge kind of indicator of how the rest of the year goes. We start 3-0 as we should, and then we go to Wisconsin. It's going to be like, do we continue a lot of that momentum? Do we continue feeling really good about ourselves? And all of a sudden, Terps are 4-0, and maybe we're receiving votes. Probably not. But maybe we've put ourselves in a really good position where people are like, this Maryland team is better than we thought. And then Maryland themselves are also like, oh, this team is a lot better than we originally thought they were. And I think that if we can beat Wisconsin after starting the year 3-0 non-conference and some easier teams, I think Wisconsin ends up being a turning point for the year. Whereas if things go well the first couple of games, maybe we win, whatever the case is, maybe we don't win as much as we want, then we hit the Wisconsin game, and all of a sudden things start to go down the road and we get crushed, maybe get smacked in the face by Wisconsin. One loss turns into 2 against Washington, turns into 3 against Nebraska, and all of a sudden we've lost our first couple Big Ten games. I think it's a huge indicator, whereas if we beat Wisconsin but then we lose to Washington the next week, I think you're still feeling okay about where you're at. I think you're still feeling pretty solid about being 4-1 on the year and only having one loss. I think that's a reasonable expectation for the Terps. So I think Wisconsin, to me, is the most important game of the season because I think it's a turning point for the Terps. I think it's a turning point for Maryland, and I really think that it can go a long way in winning that. It's a turning point in the season. So I think that it's definitely interesting where the Terps sit in terms of this Wisconsin game. It's also, which is really interesting, our first road test. Another reason why I think this Wisconsin game is a really important game for the Terps. It's our first road test, and Wisconsin's going to be doing a whole lot of different things. They'll have a big crowd for Wisconsin. They'll definitely have a big crowd. It'll probably be sold out. And we'll see our first road test for Maryland football. And whoever our new quarterback is, that'll be their first game that they're playing. So I do think that first game for Maryland, I guess, first road game against Wisconsin is really interesting for the Terps. And I think most people coming into the season have Wisconsin as a better team than us. It's probably fair on paper. This is a real opportunity for Maryland to get a win. If you look at Wisconsin's schedule, they have a gauntlet. If you look at some of the teams they play this year, they play some good teams. They play Alabama. They play Michigan. They play Ohio State. They play Oregon. They play Indiana. They play Illinois. This Wisconsin team has a lot of tough games on their schedule. And if you look at where we're smacked right into the middle of, they play Alabama the week before us, which I think is really interesting. And then they play Michigan the week after us. So in terms of getting Big Ten wins, our win projections projected at like 4.5 or something on Vegas. So to me, all that means is Vegas, the rest of the country, most people, they don't expect us to win Big Ten games. And this Wisconsin game has us a real ability to have a team that 100% could overlook us. 100% could overlook us. They played Alabama the week before, so they're already going to be banged up. And then they play Michigan the next week. That is a tough one for Wisconsin not to look ahead and be like, oh, we just played Maryland, or we just played Alabama. This Maryland game's whatever. We have Michigan to prepare for. We're banged up. I think that's a real ability for Maryland, and this goes back to my point of Maryland not being projected to win very many Big Ten games. If Maryland's a team that a lot of people project it to be, maybe we're not that great, it's a real opportunity to be a quality Big Ten team that a lot of people think you're going to lose to. And you're not going to have a ton of chances throughout the season, according to people and what they predict, to be able to do that. Now, we do have ranked the easiest schedule in the Big Ten. A big reason why I think Maryland can go over their 4.5 win schedule. I looked at an article. I think it was by CBS. They had ranked every Big Ten schedule, and Maryland was literally dead last at 18th. 18th best schedule in the Big Ten. So that's why I think this year is a huge year for Mike Locksley, because you can't lose. You can't win no Big Ten games while having the 18th ranked Big Ten schedule. And I know some of these Big Ten teams are still really solid programs, but I think this Wisconsin game is a really good opportunity to get a win against a brand, a good team. It's no Bama or Michigan or Oregon in the Big Ten, but it's a really solid Big Ten program that has been in that middle upper class in the Big Ten. You know, the middle upper class, it's like beneath Ohio State, Michigan, those teams, but they're still been really good in the Big Ten and make consistent bowl games and do things at a really high level consistently. And everyone thinks of them as a tough out and a tough win. Like, people will watch Alabama, Wisconsin. Like, that'll be a big matchup. So I do think that that game's going to be important. And then I haven't even gotten into the Billy Edwards stuff. That's another thing that I think is really big, and another reason that brings importance. People will be watching. People will be interested in that. Billy Edwards is our former quarterback, obviously, from last year, as you guys all know, and we get to play him again. He either is going to get revenge on us, or we're going to show people why we didn't feel, or I guess we did want him back. I can't say we didn't want him back, but you know what I mean? Like, the revenge can go both ways for sure. He can get revenge on us, but we can also get revenge on him for leaving us. So I do think that's another storyline that makes it a really big game and can give us a lot of momentum, and Mike Locksley momentum in the season. I just think it's a turning point, to be completely honest. So I do think it'll be really interesting, the Wisconsin game. I'm putting a lot of stock into that being Maryland's most important game of the season. Let me know what you guys think is the most important game of the season, especially with Maryland kind of not playing like Ohio State, Michigan, those types of teams. So you don't have any of the big dogs. So I do think it is really interesting so far. But next, I want to talk about Malik Washington's injury. Will it affect the quarterback battle? I'll talk about that next. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can be. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. In addition to managing money, you're also building wealth. So there's so many different things you can do on Monarch Money, and I love to use it because I can see where my subscriptions are when I accidentally sign up for something and forget to cancel it. I know you guys have all done that, or track where my spending is going in terms of food delivery, different things like that. I can get a really clear picture on Monarch Money. So take control of your finance with Monarch Money. Use code LockedOnCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LockedOnCollege for half off your first year. So Malik Washington has been a little bit limited in camp with a leg injury. And to me, I'm not worried. I'll go ahead and say that. It's limited. He's still getting some reps in and everything like that. I don't think this is going to affect the quarterback situation. I still think it's Malik Washington's job at this point. I just think that Mike Locksley is going to have to start. I think Mike Locksley, where this program is going, he realizes that this is kind of like, you know, when NFL coaches, they draft the rookie quarterback, and it's like, oh, they're drafting that guy to save their job because it's like, oh, they've had a bad couple of years. You definitely have heard this with the NFL. It's like they've had a bad couple of years. Now they ended up with the 8th overall pick, which isn't where the team wants to be at in terms of their record, and they decide to maybe reach on a quarterback, and a lot of people are like, oh, that's for the GM and the head coach to save their job so that they can be like, oh, we didn't have a great year again the next year. We just got started working on this new rookie. That's why this new rookie quarterback. And I'm not saying this is why Mike Locksley is going to start Malik Washington. This isn't it. There is some politics for sure involved in it, but I do think there's something to be said for Mike Locksley. If he doesn't play Malik Washington and we have a bad year, and there's really no way I can see Malik Washington not playing the entire year. Just don't see it. I just don't see it happening. It's like a very little chance of that happening. I think at the very least, he's playing through, I would say halfway through the year, he's probably a starting quarterback at the very least. Maybe it starts with Justin Moore, but as soon as something hits the fan, something doesn't look right, then Malik's going to take that spot. But I do think there's something to be said that if Mike Locksley played a season without Malik Washington as their starter or as the second, it was like trying to develop him. I think that Maryland didn't have a good year. I think Maryland's AD, I think some of the people behind the scenes, they'd be against that. They'd be like, you didn't have a good year. We weren't playing the 4-star kid that everyone's really excited about. I don't think that can happen for Mike Locksley. He might be out the door. Now, to go back to Malik Washington as a player in his injury, I do think he's the best player in that room. And the guys have subtly started to say it. Somebody said, I forget who it was. It might have been Dorian Fleming. I think he was like, Malik Washington is as advertised. When you say something like that, he's been playing well. He's been playing at a high level. When a guy like Dorian Fleming mentioned something like that, and I think the leg injury is obviously something we're going to talk about, something we're going to look at. But I think in the grand scheme of things, we don't play a game for a couple of weeks. Don't get me wrong. It's getting closer and closer, but we still have about 3 weeks until we actually play a game. And yeah, it's getting closer for sure, but it's definitely getting to the point where we're still at the point where we don't have to worry about an injury that's keeping Malik Washington out like a week, or it's keeping him somewhat limited. Like, that's not going to change too much with the quarterback battle. Now, if this was a week before the game, I think we'd be chatting a lot of it. It'd be my first segment. I'd be like, oh, he's hurt. Like, what's the deal with this? Malik Washington's hurt. Like, everyone would be talking about it. And I don't think he's going to be a guy that's injured a lot or anything like that, knock on wood. But I do still think it's his job. I know I've talked about the politics with the AD and the outside noise. And Maryland's definitely paying him a lot of money. All those different things is absolutely a thing with Malik Washington's thing. But there's a difference between politics and then also just being the best player. I think he's the best player in that room. And I think we saw that a little bit in the spring game. He looked better than Justin Martin. He did. And getting ranked as the worst Big Ten schedule, this is the year to probably ease him in. And so he can be ready for next year when we're facing not the easy schedule in the Big Ten, because that won't happen again. It won't. I promise you that. We won't have the easiest schedule in the Big Ten again. That's just not how it works. So I think that I hope he's healthy. Should be ready to go soon. I hope the leg injury doesn't affect him too much. But I 100% still expect Malik Washington to be the starter. We haven't had any noise. We haven't had anything about Justin Martin starting. I'm hoping we get more info from the reporters in terms of at their practices, since they're been able to go to practice and things like that. But we haven't heard too much about it, so I don't really know what to think exactly. I still think that Malik is the guy. And I want to go back to the point I made a couple episodes ago, that last year I thought for a while MJ Morris was going to be the guy. I was so hard on MJ Morris being the guy, and there was a common kind of take that Billy Edwards was the leader. And I was like, well, why would we bring in this transfer if he wasn't going to be the guy? So now I feel as if Mike Locksley ain't just bringing a quarterback and isn't going to just automatically annoy him the starter in terms of him being a transfer, like last year with MJ Morris. And there were times where Billy Edwards wasn't playing that great, and Billy Edwards really stayed consistently the starter. So I think Locksley is going to play the best player. I think he recognizes this is a new phase for Maryland basketball, or football, excuse me. This is a new kind of day for Maryland football. It is important for us to move in the right direction, to not make any mistakes, to not play the wrong guys. And so I think if His injury is what everyone makes it seem like. It's not that big of a deal. He's somewhat limited, but he's going to be back over the next week or so. I think there's no question he's still going to end up being the starter for Maryland football. Let's talk a little bit about Maryland basketball. One of our recruits went off. Is he a potential guy that could play next year? We'll talk about that next. So I wanted to talk about Gil Delpino has kind of broken out. So I saw this in the FIBA U18 Eurobasket tournament in the championship against France. Delpino broke out, and remember, this kid's 6'5". He's an incoming freshman for Maryland basketball, and I think a lot of people thought he was kind of a guy that was going to sit, maybe redshirt, but had a high upside as eventually potentially playing for Maryland basketball. But now people are starting to be like, maybe he's a guy that actually ends up playing for us. And there's so much depth on this Maryland basketball team. The guard spot's wide open. Like, I have no idea. I look at it, I'm like, there's 6 guys that I'm like could play and that could play at a high level. Like, there's a lot of different players, and I think that's a big reason why I've been like, and people outside of me think he was kind of going to be a redshirt type of person. But Delpino could be a really underrated pickup for Maryland basketball and could actually transition into being a guy for Maryland basketball, maybe early on. I'm still trying to gauge his skill level. It's hard because you're like comparing him to high school and college guys in the U.S. when he's playing in the FIBA U18 stuff. Like, it's hard to kind of make the comparisons. It's kind of an apples to orange comparison, but you still kind of have to look at him. And I think if he physically develops, he's a little bit skinny right now. He's a little bit on the smaller side. If Maryland puts him in the weight room the right way, adds weight to his frame, gets him stronger, gets him to be a little bit more athletically burstful, if you guys know what I mean, a little bit stronger, a little bit more explosive, a little bit more upper and lower body strength, add some weight to his frame, whatever the case is, whatever we have to do, we should be able to do that as a Big Ten type of school. I think he could be an early contributor. I do. After seeing and reading about different opinions people have on him, I do think that he'll be able to end a spot in the rotation. So it could be really interesting. I don't know what he has in store. This is what Buzz Williams said about him in May, so a couple months ago. He's a highly skilled and competitive player who's been proven he can produce at a high level. So he brings outstanding character and maturity and a deep love for the game of basketball. And he comes from a great family, and we know he'll fit seamlessly into the culture we're building here. And we're confident he'll make an immediate impact and be a key piece of what we're building at Maryland. So I don't know exactly. I did want to talk about this because he has been playing really well at the U18, and he hit the game winner and different things like that. So maybe he's a guy that we end up not redshirting, and he actually ends up playing. So he averaged 9.7 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 2.2 assists in just over 21 minutes per game in group play. And so he's definitely been good, has an international resume. So we'll see exactly what happens with him. Definitely a guy to look out for. But that's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.